When discussing the intersection of music, fashion, and celebrity influence, Calvin Klein often stands at the center of global attention. The brand has long cultivated a reputation for bridging contemporary cultural icons with minimalist aesthetics, ensuring that every campaign resonates not just with style enthusiasts, but also with audiences outside the fashion industry. In this context, the Spring 2026 collection presentation in New York became more than a display of new designs. It turned into a moment that connected international pop culture, unexpected statements, and global fan communities. Rosalia, the Spanish pop star whose career has consistently blurred the boundaries between traditional flamenco roots and contemporary experimental pop, appeared at the event as one of the celebrity attendees. Her presence was already expected to generate coverage, given her established collaborations with fashion houses and her distinctive personal style. However, what caught wider attention was not simply her appearance or her outfit at the show, but rather her candid remark about Jungkook, the South Korean singer best known as a member of BTS and as one of Calvin Klein's most recognizable ambassadors. Jungkook's association with Calvin Klein has been ongoing since 2023, when the brand selected him as a global spokesperson. His impact was immediate and measurable. Sales of key pieces featured in his campaigns rose sharply, digital engagement surged across Calvin Klein's social media platforms, and the brand secured a stronger foothold in East and Southeast Asian markets. For many industry analysts, Jungkook represented the successful merging of music fandom and fashion marketing, proving that celebrity endorsements could extend far beyond superficial visibility. The New York show for Calvin Klein's Spring 2026 line, designed by Veronica Leone, was positioned as a cinematic expression of urban reality and raw beauty. The collection emphasized tailored silhouettes, neutral palettes, and subtle references to metropolitan living. It was the kind of presentation that Calvin Klein has refined over decades, minimalist in aesthetic yet highly strategic in its cultural positioning. Against this backdrop, Rosalia's comment about Jungkook was entirely unscripted but carried significant implications. The moment unfolded during an interview segment conducted just after the runway presentation. Several fashion journalists and media platforms were interviewing attending celebrities, asking for their impressions of the collection. When Rosalia was asked about her perspective on Calvin Klein's cultural direction, she shifted the conversation toward Jungkook. She acknowledged his role in redefining the brand's public perception and casually mentioned that she considered him a new kind of inspiration. Although the remark was not extensive, it was instantly picked up by media outlets and amplified across social media platforms. Fashion reporters highlighted the comment as a sign of cross-cultural acknowledgement, while fan communities, particularly those dedicated to BTS, began dissecting the meaning of Rosalia's words. For many, her statement suggested a recognition of Jungkook not just as a global ambassador, but as an influential figure who could inspire artists from entirely different musical and cultural backgrounds. From a neutral analytical perspective, the significance of this confession lay in three interconnected areas: the fashion industry's increasing reliance on celebrity crossover, the globalization of pop culture influence, and the evolving strategies of Calvin Klein itself. First, celebrity. Crossover has become an essential part of brand storytelling. Rosalia, as a Spanish artist with strong influence in both European and Latin American markets, recognizing Jungkook, a South Korean artist with global impact, illustrates how celebrity visibility transcends geographic and cultural boundaries. This is not simply about mutual admiration. It reflects how brands like Calvin Klein benefit when cultural icons acknowledge one another, creating a chain reaction of media narratives. Second, the globalization of pop culture has shifted how audiences perceive inspiration. When Rosalia references Jungkook as an inspiration, she is acknowledging the universality of his cultural reach. Traditionally, inspiration within the fashion or music industries often stemmed from Western figures, but the landscape has changed. K-pop artists, particularly those from BTS, now represent a global benchmark for artistry, discipline, and commercial impact. Rosalia's words can thus be interpreted as a recognition of this shift, aligning herself with the idea that inspiration is no longer bound by Western-centric standards. Third, Calvin Klein's strategic positioning gains credibility through such moments. The brand is no longer just promoting clothing, it is facilitating cultural dialogue. Having Jungkook as an ambassador already cemented its relevance to younger audiences worldwide. Having another globally recognized artist like Rosalia publicly affirm his influence strengthens Calvin Klein's role as a meeting point for different cultural streams. It is also important to consider why Rosalia's comment created such a wide ripple. The statement itself was short, yet it resonated because it intersected with fan-driven ecosystems. BTS has one of the most active online fandoms, ARMY, who document, amplify, and analyze every piece of information connected to the members. Similarly, Rosalia's fans actively promote her statements and appearances. When these two ecosystems collide, the amplification effect multiplies. Media outlets recognize this dynamic, which is why her comment was quickly transformed into headlines across entertainment and fashion platforms. Industry analysts have pointed out that moments like these highlight how spontaneous remarks can generate measurable outcomes. Social media impressions tied to Calvin Klein's New York show increased significantly within hours of Rosalia's interview. Digital metrics from platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram indicated spikes in engagement, with keywords combining Rosalia, Jungkook, and Calvin Klein trending simultaneously in multiple countries. This is a clear demonstration of how celebrity statements, even unplanned, can become powerful marketing tools for brands. From a broader perspective, Rosalia's confession should not be viewed in isolation but as part of a longer narrative about the convergence of global cultural figures. Fashion shows, once considered exclusive events targeting industry insiders, have now become stages where the worlds of music, digital influence, and international stardom intersect. In this sense, Rosalia's acknowledgement of Jungkook at a Calvin Klein show was not accidental. It was a reflection of how deeply interconnected modern cultural industries have become. As this article progresses, subsequent chapters will explore in detail Jungkook's journey with Calvin Klein, Rosalia's broader fashion trajectory, the mechanisms of celebrity-driven marketing, and the implications of such cross-cultural acknowledgements. The focus will remain on providing clear analysis without emotional framing, situating Rosalia's confession within the broader dynamics of global pop culture and fashion strategy. When Calvin Klein officially announced Jungkook as a global ambassador in March 2023, it was more than a celebrity endorsement. It was a calculated business decision that reflected the fashion industry's recognition of shifting consumer behavior and cultural influence. The campaign launch was strategically timed, carefully designed, and oriented toward both fashion audiences and Jungkook's global fanbase, ARMY. This chapter explores the progression of that partnership, its measurable effects, and its significance in the context of Rosalia's later confession. The collaboration began with the release of promotional images showcasing Jungkook in signature Calvin Klein denim and minimalist apparel. The visuals carried the familiar Calvin Klein aesthetic, clean, stripped down, and subtly provocative, but what set this campaign apart was the scale of its reach. Within hours of release, the promotional material went viral across multiple platforms. The brand's official Instagram account gained millions of new followers, and Jungkook's campaign images generated some of the highest engagement statistics ever recorded for Calvin Klein. From a marketing perspective, this outcome was not surprising. Jungkook's influence is uniquely positioned at the intersection of music, digital culture, and youth identity. BTS, as a group, had already established unprecedented global visibility, but Jungkook in particular had developed a reputation as a trendsetter with wide appeal across demographics. His image blended accessibility with aspirational qualities, characteristics Calvin Klein has historically sought in its ambassadors, from Mark Wahlberg in the 1990s to Justin Bieber in the 2010s. The measurable outcomes of this partnership were evident in retail sales. Data from fashion industry market research firms showed notable increases in demand for Calvin Klein denim and underwear collections in Asian markets following Jungkook's campaign launch. In South Korea, online retailers reported stock shortages for certain product lines within days. Southeast Asian markets, including Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, recorded similar spikes. Meanwhile, in Western markets such as the United States and Europe, the campaign revitalized Calvin Klein's cultural presence, drawing renewed attention from younger consumers who had grown increasingly distant from the brand in the previous decade. Calvin Klein's decision to highlight Jungkook was also a reflection of broader trends in the fashion industry. Luxury and premium brands have increasingly turned to K-pop figures as brand ambassadors. Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Gucci have all enlisted South Korean idols to tap into the global fan ecosystems that follow K-pop with unmatched intensity. By bringing Jungkook into its campaign, Calvin Klein ensured that it was not simply participating in this trend but positioning itself at the forefront. The collaboration also extended beyond standard advertising. Jungkook featured in interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and interactive campaigns that emphasized digital engagement. Calvin Klein's marketing team capitalized on his digital native fanbase, ensuring that every piece of content was optimized for virality. This approach paid off, as the Jungkook-centered campaigns consistently outperformed those featuring other ambassadors in terms of online impressions and interactions. What makes Jungkook's role particularly noteworthy is the cultural symbolism attached to it. Calvin Klein has traditionally marketed itself as a brand that embodies modern confidence, sensuality, and minimalism. Jungkook's image aligned seamlessly with these values, but he also brought an additional layer of cultural meaning. As a South Korean artist who achieved global recognition, his presence in Calvin Klein campaigns reflected the globalization of pop culture and the dismantling of Western dominance in fashion narratives. The fact that Jungkook was not simply modeling but redefining what it meant to represent Calvin Klein elevated the partnership into a cultural milestone. This context is crucial in understanding why Rosalia's later comment resonated so widely. Her recognition of Jungkook as an inspiration was not occurring in a vacuum. By 2026, Jungkook's association with Calvin Klein had already reshaped the brand's identity, strengthened its relevance, and demonstrated the power of cross-industry influence. Rosalia's acknowledgement effectively confirmed what many analysts had already observed. Jungkook was not just an ambassador, but a transformative figure in fashion marketing. From an analytical standpoint, Jungkook's collaboration with Calvin Klein can be studied as a case of cultural branding. Cultural branding refers to the process by which brands achieve market power by attaching themselves to powerful cultural narratives. In this case, Calvin Klein aligned itself with the global narrative of K-pop's dominance, youth empowerment, and the redefinition of masculinity in popular culture. Jungkook's presence brought authenticity to this alignment, ensuring that the brand was not merely borrowing from cultural relevance, but actively participating in it. Furthermore, Jungkook's impact demonstrates how fashion and music industries operate in mutually reinforcing ways. For Jungkook, the partnership expanded his visibility outside music, establishing him as a fashion icon. For Calvin Klein, his image provided an entry point into younger consumer markets and global cultural conversations. This symbiotic relationship illustrates the new reality of celebrity branding in the digital age. Success is no longer measured only by sales, but also by how effectively a campaign embeds itself into cultural discourse. It is also worth examining how Jungkook's Calvin Klein campaigns influence perceptions of gender expression. His portrayal in these advertisements balanced athleticism, sensuality, and vulnerability, qualities that challenged traditional notions of male representation in fashion. While Calvin Klein has historically embraced provocative portrayals of masculinity, Jungkook's campaigns introduced a softer, more globalized interpretation. Analysts have noted that this shift resonated strongly with audiences who value inclusivity and diversity in representation. By the time Rosalia made her statement at the spring 2026 show, Jungkook's status as a cornerstone of Calvin Klein's global image was undeniable. Her acknowledgement of his influence was, in many ways, a reflection of industry consensus. It confirmed that his role had transcended standard ambassador duties, evolving into a cultural reference point recognized by peers across industries. The collaboration's impact can also be observed in Calvin Klein's broader strategic direction. The brand increasingly embraced partnerships with artists and influencers from diverse cultural backgrounds, signaling a deliberate move toward inclusivity. Jungkook's success as an ambassador paved the way for Calvin Klein to expand its network of global representatives, confident that such strategies yielded tangible cultural and commercial benefits. Rosalia's presence at the Calvin Klein Spring 2026 show was not incidental. By the time she made her remark about Jungkook, she had already established herself as one of the most prominent crossovers between music and fashion. Her recognition within the industry was not solely tied to her chart success, but to her ability to integrate visual identity, stylistic experimentation, and cultural hybridity into her artistry. This chapter examines Rosalia's trajectory in fashion, the depth of her industry influence, and why her words carried amplified meaning when directed at Jungkook. Rosalia entered the global music scene with a reputation for blending traditional flamenco with contemporary pop and experimental sounds. However, from the early stages of her international recognition, her fashion choices became central to her image. Rather than adopting a single consistent style, she embraced eclecticism.